Hi, my name is Sid Stewart, and this is a production from Dr. Stewart Productions on YouTube. And I want to talk to you, I want to present a lesson for 10, 12 minutes, whatever it takes, on why Christianity is good for America. I think we need to take a look at this because all across our land is a negative response to Christianity. Churches are being burnt, people are being thrown in jail, and is Christianity good for America? And then you could also ask the question, is America good for Christianity? There is definitely an anti-Christian mood floating around our country right now. Whether in the business world or in the courts or in all of our schools, that would be high schools, colleges, elementary schools and so forth, universities, in our government, even in basic societal living, the Christian finds an oppressive system that fights against the existence of God and fights those who believe in God. It also fights the Christian ethics and morals that Christians possess. This fight against Christianity is what causes churches to be burned, Christians taken to court on the very sole reason that they are Christians. Christians are arrested merely because they fix a meal and hand it to a homeless person, or just for preaching in the streets. Now, during the 16th and 17th century, there was a religious Protestant group in France, and these people were known as the Huguenots. They were French Calvinists, and French Calvinists, and were fiercely persecuted by the French government. After many years of hangings, killings, and oppression, these peaceful, loving, and hard-working Protestants were told to leave France or else. And they did so. About 1/3 of these people went to England to seek refuge, and that's where the word refugee was coined back in those days, back in the 16 and 1700s in England. But what is interesting to me is the overall moral and economic impact after 2 million Huguenots from 2,000 churches fled France back in the 16 and 1700s. They took with them their work ethic, their talents like building, construction, engineering, farming techniques, teaching skills, and a host of other needed abilities that a basic society has to have. The removal of these French Calvinists just set France back 200 years in technological advances. And it caused France to divide itself into two classes of people, the rich and the poor. And then on May 5th, 1789, the French Revolution started, a mere 150, 200 years after the Huguenots were told to leave. This was a volcano of unrest socially and politically and lasted for about a year. The socialized poor turned on the class of the wealthy and the rich, and the killings began. So, was Christianity good for France back in the 17 and 1800s, or 16 and 1700s? I would say yes. Did the absence of Christianity affect France negatively? And the answer again is yes. So let me ask another question. Is Christianity good for America? Is it good for any nation? And the resounding answer is yes. Well, for starters, the migration of Christians from mainly England founded our nation. They were the ones who came to seek out religious freedom because of the oppression overseas. They came and cleared the land, they grew the crops, they built the buildings. The Christians formulated our laws, many of them based on scriptural understanding. They formulated and developed our Constitution. They also started log cabin colleges so young ministers in America could study for the ministry here and not have to go to England over to Cambridge or Oxford or some of those big universities there. Later, these log cabin colleges grew into such massive educational forms and are called now Harvard, Princeton, and Yale, which have turned totally liberal against God's Word and against Christianity. The Puritans from England settled the northern part of the United States. The Anglicans settled the southern parts. The Catholics started one colony. They called it the Land of Mary, or what we know now is Maryland. 13 colonies in all, with new goals, new visions, hard work, and great talents. The Christians which practiced they came to practice freedom of religion. So, again, I will ask, is Christianity good for America? I would say yes, and you would have to agree with this because, number one, of the character of the Christian. A true Christian is honest. A true Christian is dependable. A true Christian has Bible work ethics. A true Christian has love for people. They're caring people. They're giving people. And they also have a vision for America that is unsurpassed around the world and with any other group that has come to America. Now, why is this important? Think about this with me. What would happen to American business if the average worker worked more efficiently, he worked smarter, he worked more carefully, and with greater dedication? What would happen to the output in our American factories? What would also happen to the cost of goods in America if theft of goods would stop? Because Christianity would make a sweep across this country in good, honest ethics. I would say that almost overnight the price of goods at a Walmart or a Target or some other department store would drop 25% because of internal and external theft. Now, we're not talking about shoplifters here necessarily, that's external, but theft of goods by employees, that's internal theft. And in 2016 it accounted for about 30% of all the inventories within the store, according to money.com report. This is a rampant, somebody's got to cover the cost of that 30% of that inventory, and guess who it is? It is the honest person who pays his bills, and he's a Christian and he does what is right. So theft is a rampant problem in every retail store. There was a survey on money.com which included 83 retailers, some of which have multiple brands, and they found that the average cost per shoplifting incident went to almost $800. Now, that's not just a $800 item stolen, but it includes the security cameras, the men in the fourth floor watching the security cameras, and all the details, all the paperwork that goes involved in arresting a shoplifter from a store. The average cost, though, per employee theft was almost $2,000. $2,000. That means there's rifles and grills and clothing and high-priced tennis shoes going out of that store and into that person's home, and nobody even knows about it. But yet somebody's got to cover the cost for these. In a study last year, it's reported by money.com that retail theft amounted to $50 billion. Could you imagine what we could do with $50 billion if all the prices across the board were lowered by that much? Could you imagine instead of spending $100 on an item, that same item was $70 or $65, or a $1 item was now 60 cents, so forth. Now, why is this important? A true Christian does not steal, so all of this theft has to be traced to people that do not believe in God. One of the 10 Commandments tells us not to steal. In fact, society would benefit greatly if we once again started to teach to the students in our schools the 10 Commandments. In fact, 3 of the commandments are already law. It's against the law to kill, it's against the law to steal, and then there's a commandment that says do not bear false witness. That's dealing with a court system of accusations. So do not bear false witness in a court of law. So 3 out of 10 are already laws in the books. Now, since Christians are those people who read and adhere to the teachings of Jesus Christ, what would also happen to the overall crime rate in America? Christians do not steal, they do not kill, they do not embezzle, they do not practice false witnessing, bearing false witnessing or lying. What would happen to the murder rate in America if Christianity were more widespread? What would happen to break and entering and drunk driving or violent crimes with weapons? Do you think the incidences of rape would go down? Rape, robbery, aggravated assault, vehicular theft, arson, murder, all these would drop. Christianity, dear friend, is good for America. Fewer jails are needed, fewer law enforcement officers needed, fewer mental health facilities are needed, and I believe mental health has taken over the job of the church by and large, but more pastors would be needed and more churches were needed. How would the welfare rolls be affected by Christianity? The Bible teaches that those who do not work don't eat. A simple statement, but very profound. Paul the Apostle in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 10 says, For even when we were with you, we gave you this rule: if a man will not work, he shall not eat. And then he goes on to say that we hear that there are some among you that are idle. There's no place for idleness in the Christian life. Even Christians that are retired are keeping busy for the church and their society. Talking about work ethics in America, we're told to work with all our might. Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verses 9 and 10. In your work at which you work under the sun or on earth during your lifetime, whatever your hands find to do, do it with your might. And since there's no quick way to money, listen to Proverbs 12:11. Whoever works with his hands will have plenty of bread, but he who follows worthless pursuits lacks sense. And worthless pursuits also include lottery and gambling and all the associated crimes that go with mafia and organized crime of that nature. So I would say Christianity is good for America. Then also we need Christians in America because of the intellectual factor. Listen to this account of Jonathan Edwards as opposed to an atheist named Max Jukes. And let me read Proverbs chapter 10, verse 7. The memory of the righteous man is blessed, but the name of the wicked will rot. Max Jukes was an atheist who lived a godless life back in the 1700s. He married an ungodly girl, and from the union there were 310 people later that came who died as paupers. 150 became criminals, 7 were murderers, 100 were drunkards, and more than half of the women were prostitutes in that 310 descendants. His 540 descendants cost the state $1.25 million, and that was back in the 1700s, so that would be equivalent to maybe $100 million today. But it kind of works both ways. Listen to this, and you tell me whether Christianity is good for America or not. There is a record of a great American man of God named Jonathan Edwards. He lived around the same time as Max Jukes, but he married a godly girl. An investigation was made of around 1,400 known descendants of Jonathan Edwards, in which 13 of them became college presidents, 65 became college professors, 3 U.S. senators, 30 judges, 100 lawyers, 60 medical doctors, 75 Army and Navy officers, 100 preachers and missionaries, 60 authors of prominence. 1 became the Vice President of the United States, and 80 became public officials in other capacities, 295 college graduates, among whom were governors of states and ministers to foreign countries. And you know what? How much did his descendants cost our nation? Not a penny. They contributed. They did not take away, but they put back into the system of our government. So in conclusion, Christianity is good for America. But right now, is America good for Christianity? There is a rise of intolerance against Christianity by those who declare we need to practice tolerance. The Bible was taken out of our schools, and so the Ten Commandments now is never taught. In fact, people freak out when they just see the Ten Commandments.